Okay, everybody's here, okay. I'm Kelly Clote, Public Information Officer for Asheville Fire Department. And as we head into the weekend, the City of Asheville would like to share the most up-to-date information regarding the water restoration efforts. We will have 3 speakers once again. We will have the Director of Water Services, David Melton. We will also have Fire Chief Scott Burnett and the Mayor, Esther Mannheimer. And if you would just keep your questions to the end to be answered. We'll start with David Melton. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. I'm David Melton, the Director of Water Resources for the City of Asheville. Since our last press conference, we understand that there's some confusion regarding water restoration. And here are some things we're hearing, and we want to take some time to provide clarity. One of the questions are, my house is in the area where service has been restored or is in progress, but I still don't have water. Given the elevation, pressure in lines, and the demand, there will be some fluctuation in water service. Question 2, how am I supposed to conserve water if I don't have any water? The request to conserve water is for customers who have water service. When customers with water reduce use, that helps keep more water in the system, which keeps pressure up and helps us recharge the entire water system. That means that your neighbors without water get water faster. Question 3, my water started and then it stopped again. This is normal. As the full system gets back up to speed, customers will most likely experience fluctuations in water pressure. This is some updates since our last press conference. Water production and distribution continue to improve, and additional areas are either restored or in progress. Concord Road to Fairview roads include Emma's Grove, Charlotte Highway, Gap Creek Highway, and Cane Creek Road. Royal Pines and Mount Royal will be coming on shortly. Water is making it through Sweeten Creek Road as well. Brevard Road from the Parkway to Long Shoals South, and we are recharging the water system that has been impacted by the water outage in the western surface area as well. And if you take a look at the map, the remaining shaded area in the middle is where we're talking about for the Royal Pines Sweet Creek area right in there. And we're also working to get water to the Avery's Creek area at this point in time too. That's all the updates I have at this time, and I'll introduce Chief Scott Burnett.
Thank you, David. Scott Burnett, Fire Chief. We continue to distribute drinking water to those who are unable to get drinking water on their own. As of 4 p.m. today, we've distributed to over 1,200 people who have been unable to get drinking water. Due to the success of our 211 partners in reaching those who can't get drinking water, and also due to the water that has been restored to many places, the requests for drinking water have decreased significantly. We will continue through the weekend delivering drinking water to those who are unable to get drinking water on their own. An important update is that those who need drinking water starting tomorrow at 9 a.m., the number to call is 251-1122. We previously had that service going through our NC211 partners. This weekend, please call 251-1122 from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. I'd like to once again thank all of our partners that have participated in the getting drinking water to those who are unable to get it themselves. At this time, I'll introduce our next speaker, Mayor Mannheimer.
Good afternoon. I'm joined by Councilwoman Sage Turner and our Vice Mayor Sandra Kilgore this afternoon. We just first want to, again, extend our deepest gratitude to everyone for their patience as we recharge the system and bring back water and bring it online for customers. We understand this is a terrible hardship on so many folks, so many families who are experiencing this outage, and so many businesses who are dependent on water to operate their business. And the urgency has not let up. We are continuing to work, and I know this is Friday afternoon, and people are probably concerned about going into a weekend, and we just want to reassure you that this team's not going away. We're going to stay here until this is fully restored. We're going to be available to provide information and updates throughout the weekend, and the staff is continuing to work as hard as they can to restore water service to all of our customers. I do want to address a couple of things that we're trying to address that we've heard out there, either through social media or for direct communications from folks. One is, do you need to declare a state of emergency for the city of Asheville? And the answer is that we are operating under the governor's state of emergency, which was declared on December 20th and is good for 30 days for anything related to the weather. And this incident is related to the weather, so we are covered under the governor's state of emergency. So thanks for all the folks that have asked about that question. It's a good question, but we have made sure that we're operating under the parameters that we need to be able to provide the services we need to our community. We are working with emergency services here in Buncombe County, which are supported by the state, and so that helps us in making sure water is distributed to those who are in need. And the chief already talked about that earlier. Of particular note, as we go into the weekend, we were using the 211 system, which we're going to use till the end of today. But after this evening, we'll need to switch over to the water customer service line if people need water. So if you need water, emergency water resources, you'll need to call the customer service line, and we'll recap this after this press conference. So this is all in writing. And that number is 828-251-1122. That's the city's customer service line. You can also find that online on our website, but that's 828-251-1122, and that's for emergency water resources. Another question I have been asked and wanted to address was I've talked to the chair of our Area Independent Restaurant Association, a question about restaurants. So if restaurants don't have water, the county health department is not going to, you're not allowed to operate under state law, but you can operate under a boil water advisory. So if you have water, but you're under that boil water advisory, we have already provided training for restaurants so they know how to operate under the boil water advisory restrictions, but that is possible. However, if a restaurant has been shut down for operating without water and needs to come back online this weekend because they've got water restored, this is only for restaurants who are actually shut down, they will need to call the county. The county will have this number open all weekend at 828, this is the county health department, 828-250-5016. Again, this information will be online. If you were a restaurant that's been operating but you shut yourself down, you just stopped operating because you didn't have water and you want to come back online after you have water, that is fine. You can do that under the boil water advisory with the boil water advisory restrictions. Again, this will all be recapped in a press statement after we close out of here. That will be pushed out, so if anyone has any questions or needs those phone numbers again, that's going to be available. So just to reiterate, I had another question from someone who said, I had water and then it was shut off. Well, the water wasn't shut off. The water pressure is building in the lines, and as people use it, the water pressure is reducing and people are losing their water service, or it's being reduced to a trickle. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about those who do have water, if they can conserve their usage, so we can build back up all of the tanks that are distributed throughout the city, all of the pipes that need to be fully charged in order to provide water service to residents and to businesses. That's why we're asking you to conserve water so we can continue to build up that water pressure in the system to continuously provide water for folks throughout the south and in the far western part of it's actually the western part of the county where we need to restore water service. And finally, I just want to say, again, we're going into a weekend. We're not taking our foot off the gas pedal. We're going to be available, pushing out information, and working on the ground to restore water service. So from all of us here, we hope that this situation is quickly resolved, and we're understanding that you are going through an incredibly difficult time without water, and we understand that, and we're going to work hard to restore it. So if there are questions as we close this conference out, we can take them, and you guys are available too.
Whoever wants to take this one. Aside from drinking water, are there any options being offered by the city for people who want to fill just buckets and jugs? Because it is pricey for those to buy water and frustrating just to spend all that money on water just to flush it down the toilet, literally.
Yeah, so anyone who has a financial hardship, we are bringing them water.
Opposed to financial hardship, I mean, a lot of us in this room are not in a financial hardship, but it's tough times economically right now. Inflation is a pain in the butt too, literally. And it's just an added expense for many of us to have to go to the store to spend, hundreds of dollars on bottled water, and that's wasteful. Is there anything that's being done to just get buckets and jugs filled up?
Yeah, so not at this time, and definitely understand that hardship completely. And so the resources that we have right now, we want to make sure that they are provided to those most in need, and that's where our efforts are focused right now.
I will just supplement by saying there are a lot of apartment complexes and other retirement communities that have to have in place secondary water resources just as part of their permitting. And we're aware that they've brought in extra resources for residents there in those communities. I realize that does not address everyone's need, but hopefully addresses some folks who are able to have access to those resources for things like flushing toilets, such as you were asking about.
Maybe Mr. Melton can take this. What is being done to ensure something like this does not happen again, say, next week?
Well, like was mentioned before, this is all weather related, but we've learned a lot from this. This hasn't happened in the last 30 years, so it's an unprecedented thing, but we have learned from this. We're putting measures in place to mitigate this in the future.
Is there any, tackle down as to why this happened? I mean, I guess a lot of people are frustrated. This is Asheville. We know it's cold. We know the elevation is high. Why now? Why is this so unprecedented? We've had, cold weather like this in the past.
Sure, it's just the prolonged cold weather, the sub-zero temperatures that we had. It's just hit everybody hard. So,
can you give us an update on the status of the pump that was brought in, the additional pump? Is that?
I can. The additional pump was brought in to help bolster the western part of our system that is out of water right now. That pump is in place, pumping about 1,500 gallons a minute, which equates to around 2 million gallons a day. So it's definitely in place and working at this time. One thing we have to remember, and we're asking for patience with this, that service area has a demand or a capacity of about 9 million gallons a day. So that kind of puts some of that in perspective.
How long do you have that pump secured for? Is it till this is completely back up online and everyone has water?
It is. Yep.
This is from another reporter. Is the city going to be doing anything for businesses hurting? And this is one of the busiest times of the year for the bar and restaurant industry, right before New Year's into what considers a drop-off in sales in January, February. They're losing out on a lot of money, especially those people that have New Year's Eve, plans in place.
I think the biggest frustration I've heard is that they're not hearing exactly when they're going to have full water restoration so that they can do their planning, their staffing. We hear that. And I think as we've sat here through these press conferences and you all have heard how water redistribution works when you're recharging a system, it's that fits and starts where you'll see water and you'll see water drop off. So we're very conscientious about the challenges for businesses who are water dependent. And what I can tell you is that we're trying to restore water as fast as possible. We have had some questions from folks who say, well, how come I see a business with water on, say, Hendersonville Road, but I live, in a subdivision near there, but I don't have water. And, as I understand how the system works, you have a lot of these main trunk lines, these main feeder lines that are closer to those large roadways. And so water customers closest to those lines are seeing water first. That's positive for businesses, but negative in that when we see that increase in water usage and the drop off in pressure, we're having to continuously try to rebuild that system. So In answer to your question, we're trying to work as fast as possible to restore services. This is a big week for a lot of people. We have a lot of travelers and visitors coming into Asheville, and we know that those businesses want to be able to serve locals and visitors in this big post-holiday and pre-New Year's weekend.
But no kind of economic plan in place to be able to help those struggling? I mean, would that fall under the governor's state of emergency, any kind of SBA loan that they could even get temporary, something there?
I mean, I think that's a good question. We'll certainly look into it. We want to be able to make sure anything that is available like that could help support businesses that we tap into. We certainly did everything we could, for example, during COVID and made resources available locally. If there are opportunities like that, we're going to do everything to make them available for all of our folks here in Asheville and Buncombe County.
What does the state of emergency allow for when it comes to this specifically? Obviously, this was not snow. But when we talk about the water outages, what does the state of emergency allow for you all to do?
So as I understand it, the state of emergency can allow for, the emergency response resources and allow for that coordination and that to happen, and also the recovery of costs associated with states of emergency, which can be significant because you're obviously paying overtime and things like that. You can, as I understand it, also helps with procurement, like if you need a pump or something like that, you may be able to have a shorter path, if you will, bureaucratically for things like that. So it also does allow for certain, what I would consider pretty extreme measures in terms of, if you have to shut folks down or do things like that, which we're not looking at. But you could do something like that if you needed to under a state of emergency. Again, we're not looking at doing that, but those are the kinds of things you could do under a state of emergency.
Lastly, any update on the amount of people still impacted? I know the first number was thrown out, 38,000. I know it's fluctuating and ever changing, but do we have a better idea of how many are still affected?
As far as exact numbers, we don't. The way we represent that is more geographically like this, because it's really hard to tell, because we could live in the same subdivision. I could be 20 feet in elevation above you. You may have water and I may not. So that's why we want to represent it geographically. And the pink area is areas that are either restored or in progress of being restored.
Besides conserving water, if you have water right now, is there anything else that community members can do to try to help their neighbors who we know have not had water?
There is, and what we're asking people to do, if you've got water, please use it conservatively, because it's all about being a community and helping your neighbor, right? Because the more water we save, the faster we recharge the system, and the sooner everybody gets full service back.
Well, did you talk about the capacity of the system? And I don't know if this is so our system normally apparently operates at about 22 million gallons per day. That's the whole system. And right now it's operating at 28 million gallons as of this morning. So it's full on, but that water demand needed to restore all the tanks and all the lines is obviously great. So maybe that gives people kind of an idea of what impact it has to conserve water to be able to let that system recharge. So we've got the capacity. It is being pushed out there and trying to recharge the system as fast as possible. But when you're recharging a system, the usage level is very great compared to what normal operations look like. So maybe that gives you a little bit idea of the context there.
Thank you all very much. That'll conclude today's 4:30 press conference. And again, just keep up with the City of Asheville's social media, their website, any press releases. If we have information, we'll definitely release that as soon as possible. Thank you.